Greetings, it's Paul Deeds again. A couple of weeks ago I did a video on losing friends, and it was mostly about losing friends to death. Not a particularly pleasant topic, but it spurred a couple of comments about friends coming and going, not just dying, but leaving for different reasons. And it's something that I think about from time to time and thought I would do a video about that. In my 75 years, in anybody's 75 years, you meet a lot of people. A lot of people come into your life and go out of your life. 100,000, 500,000, a million? I really have no idea. If anybody has a thought about that or has heard anything like that, let me know. I'd be interested to hear how many different people a person meets in their lifetime. Now, they don't all become friends, to be sure, but we sure meet a lot of people. Some just touch our lives, like sales clerks at stores or waiters or waitresses, or people you make contact with but don't really spend time with. You meet an awful lot of people. Like I say, some of them just touch our lives, and some of them stick around for a while. The classmates, they're around as long as you're in school. People you work with, people change jobs and that, but you spend a significant amount of time with them before they make their exit, or before you make your exit. Neighbors too. Neighbors move in and out of your area. And there are a few that stick around for the duration. Typically not all that many if you think about it. If you think about all the thousands and thousands, maybe millions of people you meet in your lifetime, how many of them stick around? Maybe stick around isn't a fair way of putting that. People come and go from our lives for all sorts of reasons. We talked a couple of weeks ago about losing friends to death, but losing friends other ways can be just as painful. I had a good friend while I was working, very good friend, a best friend actually. And when I say best friend, I mean the person that you would call if you found yourself in trouble and needed help. That's kind of how I think of a best friend, that person that you'd call and that person that would call you. And I made the mistake. I look at it as a mistake now. It wasn't a mistake at the time. I felt very good about it at the time. He found himself in some difficulty, going through a divorce and some other job-related things, and he was a little short on cash. And I made him a loan, a friend-to-friend loan, a handshake loan. And I'm convinced that that's the source of our falling out. Falling out was not on my part. I never asked to be repaid. I expected to be repaid, but I never asked to be repaid, and never was repaid. Over a period of time, lost contact altogether. That was pretty painful for me because we were such good friends. Like I said, at the time, it was something I wanted to do, something I fortunate enough that I could do to help him out. And I was absolutely sure that it would be fine. And I was wrong. I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again. I'm not going to quit trying. Plenty of ways to lose a friend other than death. And like I said, some of them can be pretty painful, but we get through it. I mean, here we are. Obviously, we got through it. Friendships are funny things. The way we meet people, the way you become friends, the way that friendship travels. I guess first you become acquaintances, and then as you spend time together, you become friends. So I think everybody probably has their own definition of what a friend is. And you can be friends with someone and have a falling out for any number of reasons. You might just decide that you don't really have that much in common and just quit contacting each other. I don't know. Your interests change. Different things change in your life that change your interactions with other people. Sometimes if that interest is the basis of your friendship and that interest changes, the friendship changes. I think about all the friends I had when we were in Wisconsin and were in the motorcycle club. We had a ton of friends. Mostly we just rode together. That was our common interest, and we were, pretty good friends. We would get together, have a great time. But if you take out the riding part of it, how many of those do you have things in common with, other than riding? A few, to be sure. And I'm sure the reason for some friendships changing like that is they become one-sided. Sometimes it seems like all the effort to maintain the friendship is on one side. And if a relationship is one-sided for a period of time, often resentment sets in. And Kathy and I talk about this from time to time. And we both have friends that our friendships seem one-sided. But you have to decide for yourself whether the friendship means enough to you to maintain it, even if it's one-sided, assuming that you're the impetus of the contact. But everybody has to decide that for themselves. Sometimes it's not easy accepting the fact that people are different, and some people are starters and some people are followers. It's just the way it is. If you can accept that, it makes it easier on yourself. And then once a relationship falls by the wayside, it's sometimes hard to reconnect. It takes an effort to reconnect. Reaching out can be hard. I have to say I've reconnected with a number of people through social media, Facebook in particular. Say what you will about social media, does have its good points. I've said that in any number of videos. It's not all bad. A few years ago, I reconnected with some grade school classmates. That's cool to me. I mean, you're talking 60 years ago? More than 60 years ago. And my best friend growing up in Detroit was Tim. We did everything together. We got in all kinds of trouble together. We started high school together at Cass Tech, and he dropped out. This was during Vietnam, and he dropped out and joined the Marines. Went to Vietnam, and after he finished his tour in Vietnam, he was posted in Guatemala, and he met a girl in Guatemala and got married. I lost contact with him after he got married, and I tried over the years to contact him, to find him somewhere. I contacted some expatriate sites in Guatemala. I thought maybe he stayed down there with his new wife and that, but I was never able to make contact with him. He had a very common name, unfortunately. I wasn't able to find any of his family from the area. But I made a pretty honest effort. I would make an effort from time to time. I'd think about it and I would make a push to see what I could find out, and I was never able to find any. This was a few years ago now, but I think he made contact with the high school website and got in contact with a mutual friend. The mutual friend got in contact with me and gave me the lowdown, and I texted him a couple of times, emailed him a couple of times, and I was very excited about getting back in touch because I wanted to know everything that was going on. And unfortunately for me, apparently he was not as interested as I was. Come find out, he went back to college after he got married and became a very successful businessman. So I'm sure his interests had totally changed. But I was disappointed. I mean, I got over it. I was just glad to be in contact and know that he was doing well. He had a couple of tragedies in his life, come to find out, but all in all, he was doing well and doing what he wanted to do. So I was happy to know that about him. And over the years, I was able to make contact with a couple of my old service buddies too. Several of them, as a matter of fact, but two in particular. We were very close, a close trio. Actually, my friend Willie got a hold of me. This was actually back before social media, before the internet, or right around the time the internet was becoming known. Willie and his mother did it the old-fashioned way. It was before the internet, before Facebook and all of that, so they used the phone book, the yellow pages and whatnot, looking for people with similar names. Fortunately, I have an unusual last name, so it was a little easier, but they put in the effort, actually made contact, and we got back in touch, and he had already been in touch with our other friend Bob through ham radio. They were both ham radio operators, so they were already in contact for a year or two by the time they found me. And then I rejoined the group, and we ended up having several reunions, just the three of us. at all three of our locations. He was in Rochester, New York. Bob was at the time was in Seattle, Washington. And at that time I was in, let's see, where was I? I was still in Michigan at that time. So we had reunions in all three places. We all got to host a reunion of the old shipmates. And Willie passed away a few years ago from cancer, and Bob and I have gotten together a couple of times since then. Bob's a old motorcycle rider himself, so we did a couple of epic motorcycle trips. And Bob and I are still in contact. We haven't seen each other in a couple of years. We're about due. I've been tossing around the idea of riding down to Texas. He's not riding his motorcycle anymore, but that's another story. So I'm tossing the idea of next spring riding the motorcycle down to see him. Could be the last time. Who knows? I mentioned at the beginning about all the thousands and millions and hundreds of thousands, whatever it is, people that we come in contact with in our life. They don't all become friends, but we're in contact with bunches of people. I believe that they all make some contribution to who we are, even the ones in passing. The waitresses, the waiters, the sales clerks. If it's a good experience that does something for you, it's in there somewhere, And if it's a bad experience, it teaches you how not to be, if it's that kind of an experience. But I think all of our contacts have some effect, however small, however big. And I think if we pay attention, we can learn from every contact. Maybe we don't do it consciously. Maybe we should do it consciously. I don't know. I'm an amateur. And even the friends that we've had, the good friends that we've had that have moved on, that we're out of contact with, they left us with something. And we probably left them with something, whether they realize it or not. If you find yourself thinking about lost friends, remember there's probably somebody out there thinking about you too. You just never know. Peace, joy, and fond memories.